think we'll start to see a lot more younger brands being able to operate more at scale with a lot of these AI toolkits. And I think that's what I'm kind of kicked about bringing that into the hands of a lot many more brands.
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen Case Study Series. On today's episode, we have Barada Sahu, who is the CEO and co-founder of Mason, which is an AI-powered shopping engine that is transforming e-commerce by helping brands drive personalized shopping experiences and real-time interactions with customers. With over 20 years of experience in technology, Barada has led Mason to serve over 1,000 customers and 8,000 brands worldwide, simplifying online retail operations through automation and AI, which is why we're excited to have him on the show. Barada, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Devin. It's a pleasure talking to you here. And I think it's just good to share more with the listeners who are listening in on this. And hopefully we have an interesting show going around here.
Yeah, well, on that note, Barada, let's start with a quick little dive, maybe a couple of minutes into your history, who you are, where you came from, and how you landed as the CEO and co-founder of Mason.
Yeah, I mean, in this global scheme of who I am, I think I'm still finding that out. Beyond that, you know, I kind of look at my career in this two phases almost. Like there was this pre phase of where I used to be in enterprise tech, and this was almost like the pre-internet era, what I would say. I mean, the internet started off, but it was the early days of the internet, and I kind of gone through that whole cycle of where, where there was this thing called Yahoo. I don't know if you guys know about it any longer, but there was this thing called Yahoo, and it was a real Yahoo back then. And so I'd kind of gone through that phase of building for enterprise teams, customers over the years, and then I decided to jump out halfway along. I said, you know what, I've done enough of working my way up, working on different products for others, kind of starting to do something on my own. And I jumped out to do my own little startup, which was doing in this space of helping people create applications across multiple platforms. Ran that for a while, exited that to this e-commerce marketplace in India called Flipkart. For context, Flipkart was one of those acquisitions by Walmart in India. It's this big e-commerce giant in India, runs a few different business lines over there. And yeah, spent a couple of years building out their revenue infrastructure, everything that you kind of see on the storefronts, whether it's monetizing assets, whether it's ensuring that you can customize and personalize customer experiences or create content. We kind of built that over there. And as I did that, I saw there was this other phase of a lot many more brands who had their own storefronts, who were doing this on their own, and honestly speaking, lacked some of this tooling to do. And that's what, for me, also was this insight into, hey, let's go help some of these folks who we are working together on a marketplace, but maybe kind of bring this tooling to them, which can really help them accelerate their business, run it better. And so that's what I've kind of jumped out to do right now at Mason. And yeah, that's been a little bit of this short story of mine.
Wow, man, it's really cool to see that you've been on both sides of this in terms of solving big problems for big businesses, but then also taking that same principles, those same ideas, those same concepts, and then distilling them down in a way that would make them helpful for the smaller guys out there who are really trying to do something and build something for themselves. And so I imagine that in that kind of tenure of experience, you've kind of carved out some things that really seem to work in order or in terms of like driving business forward and acquiring customers and things like that. So I'd love for you to maybe share a little bit of your experience and what it looks like to get customers on both sides of that. Trying to find a way to connect with the bigger players in the game versus working with the smaller companies. What have you found to be the big differences in those two ecosystems?
No, this is very different approach. And I think while go-to-markets are continuing to evolve over a period of time, we continuously live in a market where there's new techniques coming along and they kind of get saturated, and obviously people move on to the next new thing. And we've seen that kind of happening over the years itself. This has not been new. But especially when you're talking with younger merchants and small and medium businesses to when you're talking with larger brands, the go-to-market completely shifts because the mindset of the people buying on the other side, that's also very different. They have very different problems of their own, and you've got to kind of understand those problems before you can start selling to them, before you can start getting them on your platform and so forth, start selling your services or your products to them. For us, honestly speaking, what worked early on in the small and we started off, honestly speaking, as a small and medium business service provider before we kind of jumped on. Now we also kind of work with larger brands and retailers, but before we kind of did that, and spent time solving for small and medium businesses. And over there, while GTM has evolved over the years, what I've found consistent is that one, people always need to see that they can trust you with both your products as well as your services. So it's very necessary for you to be able to amplify whatever trust you build by servicing it well, and then highlighting that to acquire new customers. That's one part that's super valuable. Other part of it is this ecosystem always exists together with partners. You've got to understand most small and medium businesses, they lean in on partners to be those experts in the ecosystem, helping them provide add-on value in terms of both knowledge as well as services, which they cannot do themselves because they don't have the entire operating know-how of the business. And these are founders, entrepreneurs who are really kind of trying to make a mark, trying to figure out what's the best fit of what's the best product for the best audience. But at the same point of time, they need help and they lean in on the ecosystem. So it's super necessary for you to kind of build those relationships with partners in the ecosystem as you kind of acquire. And that really goes a long way in terms of how you can accelerate go-to-market in the small and medium business segment. Highlight trust, focus on building these partnerships with ecosystem players. And that can be service providers, that can be other application providers or platforms which are in the ecosystem. And then obviously beyond that, I think you've got to kind of also ensure that you are right on top in terms of marketing and making this audience. Because just think about it, like if you were running a brand level, and yeah, at this point of time, you're looking at Instagram. You probably market to your customers on Instagram. You probably have TikTok that you kind of do. That's where you spend your time on. If I am selling software to you, I probably need to be there as well. If I'm not there, I'm probably not in your radar of where you spend your time. You've got to figure out the channels where your buyers really are. And so you've got to create content for those channels. You've got to ensure that you are visible and on top of the mind. So it's super essential for you to lean in on those and understand your buyers before you can start selling to them. And this holds true for this small and medium business ecosystem. Now, you shift this perspective to the enterprise ecosystem. I think it's a wholly lot more complex space. You don't have a single buyer anymore. You suddenly have a committee of buyers, and usually, with committees, they never come to a decision. With your challenge with enterprise is really not about the fact that you have the best software or your software can do wonders. It's really about they should not get fired from the job by betting on you. That's really, and so the cost of not doing anything in enterprise is actually what you're fighting against. It's not the cost of an alternative. It's they probably 80% of the deals in enterprise don't go through is because they just won't take a decision around anything. They can't agree upon a solution. That's really the key component. So your perspective changes over there as to how you kind of navigate those deals because your uh, role as a founder, as a seller, as a marketer is really to align this team now to go in this one single direction, to help them have that trust that by betting on you, it's a safe bet. They're not going to lose a job. They're going to get that promotion for the next level of their career. And that's really what you're fighting against. And so your lens to how you kind of orchestrate those deals shifts from how you work with the small and medium business segment to how you orchestrate an enterprise deal. And oftentimes there are only so many enterprises. You've also got to say there's not like a billion enterprises or a zillion enterprises. There are a few enterprises you'll start off with. You've got to treat every one of them with care, and that's really what I've learned over there. The common thing, though, in both places is that at the end of the day, software gets sold to the people. At this point of time, we have not got AI buying other AI software. It's still software getting bought by people who are probably using it with other software. So you've got to understand the human aspect of it on both sides. And if you look at it, the common theme for me in both sides of learning is that I've tried to understand the buyer on both sides, whether it's the small and medium business buyer or whether it's the enterprise buyer, is the person that you've got to understand that. And that's really the heart of how you can go about acquiring them, selling to them, marketing to them.
The human aspect of this is I think that you really kind of nailed it in terms of people are scared of making decisions because what that decision's consequences have as a result. So if they make a decision and it's a kind of small, medium-sized business, the risk is that it jeopardizes income, it jeopardizes jobs, it jeopardizes that person and what they've kind of built. Versus on the other side of this, when you're dealing with an enterprise, people are scared of losing their jobs. They're scared of losing their reputation. They're scared of not looking like they know what they're doing. And so there's this tailoring of messaging to those different groups based on those kind of fears and insecurities. And then I get a sense that you've spent a great deal of time figuring out how to articulate how your product or service is alleviating those stresses. Is that true?
Yeah. So, what, of course, in terms of educating a lot of these people, you nailed it, right. You've got to kind of ensure that you can talk to these individuals individually, saying that, hey, like, you're not going to be losing. I'm here for you, to help you in case something goes wrong with your website or your web store or your sales. That's
Mm,
the small and medium business messaging, right? I'm here for you. You can trust me on that. On the enterprise side is actually, like I said, got to understand them and say that, look, you're not going to be losing your job because you know what, you're probably not the first guy who's trying out, or maybe we're going to do a small pilot in a closed environment to ensure that I can show you the trustworthiness. I can help you sell this back to your management to get
mm,
in the buy-in and the budget and to help align others. So you've got to kind of talk to those individuals on this other side, even as you kind of navigate both of these deal structures. And of course, one part of it is ensuring that your product truly delivers on value, but beyond that, also specific to the points of where they are and what are those real insecurities, fears, or opportunities that they're looking at. Maybe somebody is looking at a boost in their career, they've been stagnant long enough, and they're looking at doing something which will help them move the needle on that in an enterprise. And this can really be how they bring something new to the table and can have a conversation around that. How can we help? That's really how we kind of navigate. Yeah.
And getting distilled on that messaging, I think, is one challenge that a lot of businesses face, no matter what size they are. Is when, yeah,
Yeah.
I got this thing, and I'm trying to convince somebody else that it's going to help them, and here's 10 ways that we can achieve that outcome, but only one or two of these are actually going to resonate with people, and it really does have to speak to the challenges or the pain points that they have, and not just generally speaking. It needs to be really, really specific because that's how people raise their hand and go, "Yep, I've got that problem. I'm ready to go." And I picked up on one of the elements of your pipeline or your kind of customer experience journey starts from kind of a high level education type content. Is that true?
Yeah. So when you talk about the customer experience journey, you're talking through the product, how we deliver it. Is that what you mean, or is that?
I'm gonna go zoom out just a little bit more and
Yeah,
go, hey, how do
yeah.
they even find you? And then how do you
Ah,
bring
yeah,
them in? And then once
yeah.
they're in, yes, they're gonna have this really great experience, and then they'll talk
Absolutely.
about it.
A large part of the challenge for most of these merchants today is that they do not even understand how to solve the problem, because the space is not, the e-commerce space has been around for a while, but it's also super noisy. Everybody's saying that, hey, we can help you improve conversions, we can help you improve sales, we can help you deliver ROI. And whether you're doing email marketing, whether you're doing SMS marketing, whether you're doing in-store conversions, whether you're doing discounts, or whether you're automating stuff, everybody's claiming the same outcomes. It's very noisy for the buyer on the other end, and really to have a trustworthy conversation around this. So a large part of it starts exactly what you spoke about. It starts about educating about the problem. And more
Mm,
specifically in our case, we speak a little bit about, what, one of those big challenges that you have there is that you're bringing in a bunch of this traffic onto your storefront, and 98 out of those 100 customers that do not end up buying from you.
mm,
Large part of the reason why that conversation does not move forward is that you probably do not understand those 98 customers yet. They've not dropped in the email, they have not provided you enough of the details. So before you start selling, you've got to start understanding. It's exactly what we do, by the way. We do not have an uber prescriptive approach to saying that, hey, as a business, this is what you should do. I first start understanding you as a business. Where do you lie on that segment? Is it that you're selling to 90 or 10 of your customers, or are you selling to 2 of your customers today? And that's basically where we start to have a conversation. How can we help you? And that's a tailored strategy. And so for that, it's exactly the same care that you've got to bring for your own visitors who are coming to your store. So we start educating them. We start educating that here are the techniques about how we can really help you with that. If customers are early on in the journey, maybe they need more assistance in terms of discovering and knowing more about your products before they can start deciding. If they're down the funnel, maybe they need better recommendations. That's what will help them decide. I can't decide between A or B. Maybe show me some comparisons. It can helps me take a choice. And maybe when they're down the funnel, they need more offers. It's, I have a budget, I'm looking at it, and maybe I need an offer to move myself across the needle. But there are different stages of these consumer journeys. But really, it's about, for the brand, it's about educating them about all of these different ways that they can improve sales and conversions and drive growth for the brand before you even need our software. Maybe you don't even need us as a software, but this is how you can do it yourself. And maybe, we can just make it easy for you. That's really how we kind of start having those conversations. But really, it's about educating the brand. It's about educating these marketeers who are running these storefronts in this model.
So this creates a bit of a challenge for a lot of businesses, and I'd love to get your insight on your approach to how to solve for this. Most businesses start as, hey, here's the problem. We're going to solve that problem. We can check all the boxes off. Great. Now we got to get people to know that we exist. And the only way to do that in this day and age now with social media and YouTube and all that is you have to also become a media company. You also have
Yeah,
to be able to create content that's useful. And it could be blogs, it could be videos, it could be infographics or images or things like that. But that creates a whole new level of workload and challenges along the way in terms of how do you produce it in a way that's useful, how do you distribute it in a way that's going to reach the people, and then what are you doing to actively promote it so that people do in fact find it, whether that be through search terms, PPC, or if you're doing like social awareness campaigns on top of funnel videos. So what's your approach to that whole kind of media engine and getting your message out there?
so I have this viewpoint that today businesses, especially if you're selling into small and medium businesses, you cannot ignore the importance of media, especially if you're selling to brands and retailers. You're in the e-commerce space, you're selling to brands and retailers, and these people live and breathe media. They market to the customers. That's where they expect you to be. If you're a software provider or if you're a service provider selling to them, you've got to be where they are. You can no longer step away from it, and there's no way to not have a media business and to do this. So that's number one that I want to kind of place it. Now, when we talk about doing it ourselves, I think one part of it is that, in this age of synthetic media, authentic conversations is really where it really starts off. You've got to have those authentic conversations. You've got to bring yourself to the table, both from your perspective of the lens about how you see the problem, why this is a way that you approach this specific problem, but also maybe having those conversations with other peers in the group. And that's really where those exchange of ideas matter. This ability to also contradict yourself. Sometimes you might go in with a very different lens and you're discovering new ideas. This is a novel, new approach to doing things. And that's great, for me. So those are the things that you've got to bring to the table. So people want honest, authentic conversations from founders, from leaders, and that's really where they will bite into your story and your narrative about why you are best placed to service them. When we do it, we start having these conversations. That's number one. That's how we are kind of creating this content. We have leaned in on this content. We try to be helpful with all of our content. We genuinely feel that providing this help right at the top will both create a better brand, but will also make this ecosystem a lot more open. The way that I look at it is that, I come from this background of having built on the technology side. And for us, the acceleration and technology came with really open source. A lot
Mm.
of and I worked back in when technology was closed source in the early days of that. And it was really hard to get anything done, right? We didn't have access to information. You had to go ask people. It was locked up in their heads. There was not enough documentation. And that really wasn't the fuel. While there has been the cloud movement, but open source has played an equally big role in terms of how we have accelerated momentum in the building side of things. I think it's the same when it comes down to when you're speaking to your brands, you're essentially open sourcing your ideas about how you grow. And so we have tried to take that same approach. We have tried to create content that's authentic, that's meant for the brand to help them without us biting into our software or not. That's one part. From a distribution standpoint, I think you've got to be on the channels. We spoke about this a little earlier. You've got to figure out where your customers today are. If they are on TikTok, be on TikTok. If you're selling to Gen Z creators who are setting up storefronts, most likely they'll be on TikTok. You've got to be on TikTok. If you're selling to Instagrammers, people who sell via Instagram, you've got to be on Instagram. If they are on Facebook groups, you've got to be there. You've got to figure out those channels, and then you've got to figure out the distribution of that. And then, of course, you can supplement that with more paid stuff and the like.
You know who I think is doing a really good job of this is the whole WordPress ecosystem. I think, and this is to your point of the open source, creating a playground for people to interact with your product, but also collaborate. I think is so important. So what WordPress did really well was, hey, here's a way for you to just build your website. I honestly don't think I've ever paid WordPress any money ever, and I've built a
Yeah.
thousand websites using WordPress. What's really great about it is that because it's open source in the sense that hey, we can generate plugins and we can build little backend things and all these little tools to make the platform more robust. Now you have all these other third party people creating content, sharing these ideas. Hey, we got this thing that achieves this outcome. Like if you need a shopping cart e-commerce solution for your website, go get WooCommerce. We got all these little plugins and things that you can tie together, and there's videos that people create of how to integrate these things and use them uniquely, and so they've done a really great job of solving the problem, creating a community and a playground where people can interact with it. Is that part of like what you're saying in that we got to go where our people are, but we also have to be delivering some sort of value and then creating an ecosystem for them to interact with each other?
Yeah. So delivering value, creating an ecosystem in terms of participation, in terms of sharing the comments back, feedback back. Last one that I kind of try to look on is that, you've got to bring personality to the table,
Ah,
because if you don't have a personality, people aren't going to. People want to listen to authentic content. The way that I look at it, content is what content is going to hold your attention. If you haven't got personality, you haven't got anybody's attention. That's really the key. Also, when you're creating content, so you've got to have a point of view. You've got to also speak about that point of view, and you've got to deliver it in a written tone. And I think that's super important as well.
yeah, really awesome. So then on the other side, one common element that I've heard a lot of people talk about is the referral part of the whole thing, and that's the aftermath, right? If somebody goes through your experience, like the customer experience map, they found you, they decided it's a good match, they went through the program or whatever, and then on the other side they come out and their problem is solved. Was it a remarkable enough experience for them to still to go to their peers or to other people and talk about it? So I'm curious, what have you done to kind of engineer that into your process? Is that something that naturally happens because your solution is so unique, or have you specifically spent some time like creating reasons for people to talk about you?
That's still something that you're working on, honestly speaking. So far, it has been more organic of sorts, where, you know what, we have delivered value. And so obviously a lot of people, I mean, oftentimes we work with these brands who have an e-commerce manager, and sometimes an e-commerce manager shifts to another brand and he says that, you know what, I used to use that. Let me get that back in over here. So that's one thing that you kind of lean in on. The second thing that usually kind of comes in is that, you know what, here's a friend of mine who's doing something on, let's say I'm running a pet food brand, and here's somebody who's starting something in beauty, and I really want to tell them that, hey, why don't you give them a shot? They've done a good job for me. So that's the kind of referral and word of mouth that's working. But honestly speaking, it's starting to work more on that today, and I don't yet have, you know what, I wish I had this engineered back into a whole process itself, and I had a great answer in terms of like, this is what we do specifically. But today we rely more on in terms of like the quality of product, the quality of service to really do it. But over a period of time, I definitely see that leaning in more on that builds up a lot more trustworthy ecosystem where, you know what, people love to use products that their friends use. We are social animals at the end of the day. If you're using Zoom, or if you're using Fireflies, or if you're using Note Taker, I'm probably gonna use that, because I'm gonna see that, hey, I like that. I like that Note Taker that you're using. It looks good. I'm gonna try that, give that a spin. That's what people want to see. So I think the power of social reference is very undertapped from that aspect. I think there's some way for us to go, but I definitely see that as a powerful moving machinery for us to kind of accelerate curve.
Yeah, to leverage that word of mouth and to intentionally engineer for it, which I think is, we get lost in it as people who are kind of designing these solutions and fixing problems, and we're out here, we're up to it, right? And then, uh, we often get so amassed in that we don't think about the opportunities that exist in, hey, what about this is shareable? And
Yeah.
that's a good question for people to ask themselves. Um, as we kind of come to a close with our time together here, Barada, I'm curious if we can look a little bit forward and explore some of the big goals that you guys are aiming at. What's on the horizon? What's coming down the pipeline for your efforts here?
Yeah, so I think one of those things that I'm excited about is as a business, as we're kind of continuing to scale and deliver value with our merchants, I think we're starting to see more expansion in terms of the adoption and this whole category of merchants realizing that this is a true problem which you need to start looking at. So I'm very excited about this next quarter, this ending quarter, because most of commerce gets done at the end of the year. People start opening up the wallets. It's holiday season. We want to spend. I'm hoping that we can be a part of that growth. So that's one thing that I'm quite excited about of this upcoming quarter. But beyond that, I'm also very excited about this movement of where AI is starting to play a role in with helping a lot of these brands accelerate and work more like enterprise brands who truly do at scale. And AI is unlocking a lot of those capabilities for younger brands. So I see a lot of more competition where younger brands can really truly operate at scale with a bunch of these AI tooling. And this already happening where, software is probably getting built by 2 or 3 member teams rather than maybe a 30-member team, which you only do. I think we'll start to see a lot more younger brands being able to operate more at scale with a lot of these AI toolkits. And I think that's what I'm kind of kicked about bringing that into the hands of lot many more brands.
Yeah, that's really exciting. You reminded me of a podcast that I watched a couple of weeks ago about how AI has helped teams become so efficient that we have seen for the first time in history solo 7 and 8 figure businesses
Absolutely.
and almost to that 9 or 10 figure, and we may in fact see that on a skeleton crew, a 1 billion dollar company
Yeah.
built on the back of 1 or 2 people really executing efficiently. So it's really crazy to see some of these technologies and how they're evolving. And when it comes to your involvement in that, are you on the front lines in it, trying to, mess around and see what this stuff looks like? Or are you taking a more cautious approach where you kind of stand back on the sidelines and you're just observing everybody else kind of fumble through it here?
So I think we have a pretty active portfolio in terms of AI products that we kind of deliver over there
Mhm.
to merchants, but also in terms of our internal use of it. I think one thing that I've actively looked at within our team is that each one of them is AI enabled of sorts, and they look at this as an opportunity and a way for them to grow. Because look, it's exactly like you said. We have 1 or 2 member teams doing a lot more stuff and being able to build out these big businesses, but also being able to free up the time to do more interesting stuff. This is interesting stuff. We are having a conversation. We're talking about things. We're talking about the future. We're talking about how brands can really scale. This is good, fun stuff. I mean, I would much rather spend more time doing fun stuff rather than, sitting in front of a computer and trying to look through and to optimize my ad spend. I do not want to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, we
So
got
so
to
that
find a
that's
better
exactly the kind
balance.
of that's exactly. So we look at more human stuff. We look at the more fun stuff. We have a coffee. We have a beer. That's what I would like to spend more time on. And yeah, and that's really what I'm hoping that some of this can do. But really, I think we are very active, both users as well as builders in the space. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting, man. This has been very insightful. You've been so generous with your time and your wisdom, and I'm very grateful for that. As we close out the show, I wonder if we could leave on a high note here. Imagining somebody who's kind of out there, up to it, trying to build something for themselves, maybe facing some challenges or hurdles. What sort of advice might you have for them to kind of keep them in pursuit of achieving their goals?
It's always going to be ups and downs. But I think in life, if you don't have downs, you don't see the ups because it's like it's dopamine. You've got to think about it in life. You need to have some amount of downtime and rest for yourself to really see the highs. And so you've got to think about that. So it's good that you're going through some of these struggles right now, but they'll really kind of keep you focused in terms of ensuring and anything worth achieving, I think is also worth being difficult because then it makes it a lot more meaningful for us personally. And I think those are the things that we remember. That said, I would say that the ecosystem is large. People these days are a lot more receptive, open to having conversations. If you're having a hard time, just reach out. I think all of us are here to help. If you can hit me up, you can hit Devon up, you can hit a lot of the people in the ecosystem up, and I'm pretty sure there are people around who care about you, who would love to kind of get you, help you pass this. So yeah, so that's what I kind of keep it. But keep at it.
Really powerful, man. If somebody wanted to reach out to you to pick your brain further or perhaps work with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Mercurial Solo. And I'm on LinkedIn as well, so you can hit me up on LinkedIn or Twitter. And if you want to reach out to us, we are at getmason.io. That is getmason.io. And just give us a shout for any of these places. I'm more than happy to jump in and kind of help you stuff that you're doing.
Wonderful. We'll make sure to link to that in the show notes so that anybody watching or listening will be able to find you easily. And on that note, if you're looking for AI or marketing services, you can visit nextgengrowth.com to explore how we might support some of your efforts there. Thank you for taking the time to join us for this episode. It has been a pleasure exploring this conversation with you, Baradu. And if you want to stay in touch with us, you can follow, subscribe, make sure you hit us up wherever you find this if you got any questions and comments. Otherwise, that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining us, and I will see you in the next.